The history of Denmark begins in the mists of prehistory, when the first inhabitants arrived in the region following the retreat of glaciers around 12,000 BCE. These early hunter-gatherers left behind impressive archaeological evidence, including the famous Maglemosian culture artifacts found throughout Scandinavia. The Bronze Age marked a significant cultural shift, with the emergence of sophisticated metalworking and the construction of burial mounds that still dot the Danish landscape. The Trundholm Sun chariot, dating to this period, represents one of Europe's most remarkable Bronze Age artifacts and demonstrates the advanced craftsmanship of early Danish peoples. During the Iron Age, Germanic tribes established themselves across the Danish peninsula and islands. The Cimbri and Teutones, mentioned by Roman historians, launched raids into Roman territories, establishing Denmark's early reputation as a land of fierce warriors. Archaeological discoveries from this period, including the remarkably preserved bog bodies like the Tallinn Man, provide vivid glimpses into the religious practices and daily life of pre-Christian Denmark. Viking Age represents Denmark's most internationally recognized historical period. Danish Vikings, known as Danes, launched extensive raids and conquests across Europe, establishing settlements from Ireland to Russia. The legendary King Gorm the Old, who ruled around 936 to 958 CE, is traditionally considered the first king of a unified Denmark, though the historical record remains fragmentary. Gorm's son, Harald Bluetooth, achieved two momentous accomplishments that shaped Danish history. First, he completed the unification of Denmark, bringing together the various tribes and territories under a single crown. Second, and perhaps more significantly, he converted to Christianity around 960 CE, making Denmark one of the first Scandinavian kingdoms to officially adopt a Christian faith. The famous Jelling stones, erected by Harald, bear runic inscriptions declaring his achievements and are often called Denmark's birth certificate. The Viking expansion reached its zenith under subsequent rulers. Danish forces conquered large portions of England, established the Danelaw, and even briefly ruled over a North Sea empire that included Denmark, Norway, and parts of Sweden and England. The reign of Canute the Great represented the height of Danish power, as he simultaneously ruled Denmark, England, and Norway. Following the end of the Viking Age, Denmark entered a period of internal consolidation and medieval state-building. The establishment of Christianity brought profound changes to Danish society, including the construction of impressive stone churches and the introduction of written law codes. The Danish church became increasingly powerful, with monasteries serving as centers of learning and agriculture. The medieval period saw the emergence of a more structured feudal system, though Denmark maintained certain unique characteristics. The concept of the Danihof, an assembly of nobles and clergy, provided a form of early parliamentary governance that would influence Danish political development for centuries. Trade became increasingly important during this period, with Danish merchants establishing connections across the Baltic Sea. The rise of the Hanseatic League brought both opportunities and challenges, as German merchants gained significant influence in Danish towns while Danish traders expanded their reach throughout northern Europe. The 14th century brought significant challenges, including the Black Death, which devastated Denmark's population, and internal political struggles that weakened royal authority. The kingdom experienced periods of civil war and foreign intervention, setting the stage for major political changes in the following century. Queen Margaret I of Denmark achieved one of the most remarkable political accomplishments in Scandinavian history by establishing the Kalmar Union in 1397. This union brought together Denmark, Norway, and Sweden under a single monarch, creating the largest political entity in medieval Europe. Margaret, known as the Semiramis of the North, demonstrated exceptional diplomatic skill in managing this complex arrangement. The Kalmar Union provided Denmark with unprecedented power and influence, but it also created lasting tensions with Sweden, which chafed under Danish rule. The Union survived for over a century, though it was frequently challenged by Swedish rebellions and noble unrest. The Danish monarchy attempted to maintain control through a combination of military force, political maneuvering, and cultural integration. During this period, Denmark experienced significant cultural and economic development. The establishment of the University of Copenhagen in 1479 marked the beginning of higher education in Denmark, while trade continued to expand throughout the Baltic region. The Danish capital became a major center of Northern European politics and culture. The Union finally collapsed in 1523 when Gustav Vasa successfully established Swedish independence. This marked the end of Denmark as medieval empire and forced the kingdom to adapt to a new political reality in Northern Europe. The 16th century brought dramatic religious and political changes to Denmark. King Christian III introduced the Protestant Reformation in 1536. Making Denmark one of the first kingdoms to officially adopt Lutheranism. This religious transformation had profound social and economic consequences. As the crown seized Catholic Church properties and redistributed wealth, while Danish culture gradually adapted to Protestant values and practices. The Reformation also strengthened royal authority as the king became the head of the Danish Church. This consolidation of power set the stage for the later establishment of absolute monarchy. The period saw significant cultural flowering, with the construction of Renaissance castles like Kronborg, and the development of Danish literature and learning. Denmark's strategic position in the Baltic Sea led to frequent conflicts with Sweden, known as the Northern Wars. These conflicts, including the devastating 30 Years' War period, placed enormous strain on Danish resources and territory. The wars culminated in significant territorial losses, including the southern Swedish provinces of Scania, Halland, and Bleking, which had been Danish for centuries. The Swedish Wars marked a turning point in Danish history, as the kingdom was forced to abandon its ambitions for Baltic dominance and focus on internal development and reform. The military disasters of the Swedish Wars led to a constitutional revolution in 1660, when King Frederick III established absolute monarchy in Denmark. This system, which lasted until 1848, centralized power in the crown and created a more efficient administrative system. The absolute monarchy period saw significant internal reforms, including the codification of Danish law and the establishment of a more professional bureaucracy. The 18th century marked the beginning of Denmark's golden age of culture and learning. The reign of Christian VII, despite the king's mental illness, saw significant cultural achievements under the influence of progressive ministers and intellectuals. The period produced remarkable figures like the philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, the sculptor Bertel Thorvaldsen, and the fairy tale writer Hans Christian Andersen. Denmark also experienced significant agricultural reforms during this period, as the traditional system of open fields and common lands was replaced by individual farms and modern agricultural techniques. These reforms dramatically increased agricultural productivity and improved the living conditions of the rural population. The late 18th and early 19th centuries saw Denmark caught up in the Napoleonic Wars, as the kingdom struggled to maintain neutrality while protecting its maritime trade. The British bombardment of Copenhagen in 1807 and the subsequent loss of the Danish fleet marked a low point in Danish fortunes, while the eventual loss of Norway to Sweden in 1814 ended centuries of Danish-Norwegian union. The revolutionary wave of 1848 reached Denmark, leading to the peaceful establishment of constitutional monarchy and the end of absolute rule. The new constitution, adopted in 1849, established a bicameral parliament and guaranteed fundamental rights to Danish citizens. This transition to democracy was remarkably smooth compared to the violent upheavals experienced in other European countries. The mid-19th century saw the emergence of Danish national romanticism, as scholars and writers worked to define Danish national identity and culture. The collection of folk songs and stories, the standardization of the Danish language, and the development of distinctly Danish architectural and artistic styles all contributed to this cultural awakening. The period also witnessed significant economic and social changes, as Denmark began its transformation from an agricultural to an industrial society. The construction of railways, the growth of manufacturing, and the expansion of international trade all contributed to rising living standards and urbanization. The Danish-German Wars of 1848 to 1850 and 1864 tested the young democracy's resolve. While Denmark successfully defended its independence in the first conflict, the disastrous Second Schleswig War resulted in the loss of the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein to Prussia and Austria. This territorial loss deeply affected Danish national consciousness and contributed to a more inward-looking approach to foreign policy. The early 20th century saw Denmark evolve into a modern welfare state, with the establishment of social insurance systems and labor rights that would later influence the development of the Nordic model. The country successfully maintained neutrality during World War I, though it faced significant economic challenges due to trade disruptions and international tensions. The interwar period brought both achievements and challenges. Denmark granted independence to Iceland in 1918 while maintaining a personal union, and the country experienced significant economic growth during the 1920s. However, the Great Depression of the 1930s brought unemployment and social unrest, leading to the rise of coalition governments and expanded social programs. World War II tested Danish society in unprecedented ways. Despite declaring neutrality, Denmark was invaded by Nazi Germany on April 9, 1940, in Operation Weserübung. The Danish government chose to remain in place and cooperate with the occupying forces, a controversial decision that allowed the country to maintain some degree of autonomy while protecting its Jewish population and other vulnerable groups. The Danish resistance movement gradually gained strength, conducting sabotage operations and intelligence gathering for the Allies. The heroic rescue of Danish Jews in 1943, when the resistance and ordinary citizens helped ferry nearly 8,000 Jews to safety in Sweden, stands as one of the most remarkable rescue operations of the Holocaust. The post-war period saw Denmark embrace both international cooperation and domestic social reform. The country became a founding member of NATO in 1949, abandoning its traditional neutrality in favor of Western alignment during the Cold War. Denmark also joined the United Nations and actively participated in peacekeeping operations around the world. Domestically, the post-war decades saw the full development of the Danish welfare state. Comprehensive social insurance, universal health care, free education, and generous unemployment benefits created a society with remarkable social mobility and equality. The concept of flexicurity, combining flexible labor markets with strong social safety nets, became a distinctive feature of the Danish model. The 1960s and 1970s brought significant social changes, as Denmark embraced the cultural revolution of the era while maintaining political stability. The country became known for its progressive social policies, including early legalization of pornography and liberal attitudes toward personal freedom. Denmark's relationship with the European project proved complex. While joining the European Economic Community in 1973, Danish voters maintained a skeptical attitude toward European integration, rejecting the Maastricht Treaty in 1992 before approving it with opt-outs in 1993. The end of the Cold War brought new opportunities and challenges for Denmark. The country played an active role in the integration of former communist countries into Western institutions and continued its tradition of international peacekeeping and development assistance. The 21st century has seen Denmark grapple with the challenges of globalization, immigration, and climate change. The country has emerged as a world leader in renewable energy, particularly wind power, and has set ambitious goals for carbon neutrality. Danish companies like Vestas and Ørsted have become global leaders in the green transition. Immigration has become a significant political issue, with Denmark implementing some of Europe's most restrictive immigration policies while struggling to integrate new arrivals into Danish society. The 2005 cartoon crisis, involving Danish newspaper cartoons depicting the Prophet Muhammad, highlighted tensions between free speech traditions and religious sensitivities in an increasingly diverse society. Denmark's political system has remained stable, with coalition governments alternating between center-left and center-right parties. The country consistently ranks among the world's happiest and most egalitarian societies, though it faces ongoing challenges related to aging demographics, healthcare costs, and maintaining competitiveness in the global economy. Denmark's history reflects the journey of a small nation that has consistently punched above its weight in international affairs while developing a distinctive model of democratic governance and social organization. From its Viking origins through its medieval empire to its modern welfare state, Denmark has demonstrated remarkable adaptability and resilience. The Danish experience offers valuable lessons about the possibilities and limitations of small state diplomacy, the development of democratic institutions, and the creation of equitable societies. As Denmark faces the challenges of the 21st century, from climate change to technological disruption to demographic change, its historical experience of successful adaptation suggests grounds for optimism about the nation's future. The story of Denmark is ultimately one of transformation and continuity, showing how a people can maintain their distinctive identity and values while adapting to changing circumstances and global challenges. This balance between tradition and innovation remains at the heart of Danish society today, as the kingdom continues to evolve while maintaining its commitment to democracy, equality, and international cooperation.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more engaging historical content.